She stepped inside for just 1 minute. The door locked, the baby disappeared, and the only one who noticed had 4 legs and no voice. It was the kind of fall afternoon that tricks you into thinking nothing bad could ever happen. Light spilled through the golden trees. The wind smelled like pine and dry leaves. And Emma finally exhaled as her 2-year-old daughter, Leia, played in the backyard with her stuffed bunny. Emma had laundry to fold, but she kept an eye on the little girl just past the porch, toddling near the patch of overgrown grass by the old well. The well. She had meant to seal it years ago. Just one of those things that stayed on the to-do list. A board covered the opening, weighted with bricks and ivy. It looked solid. It looked safe. But, like so many things in life, it only looked that way until it wasn't. 5 minutes, Emma muttered as she opened the back door. She turned to the dryer, dumped in the warm laundry, and let the screen door fall shut behind her. Click. The latch caught. It wasn't a loud sound, barely noticeable, but it was the sound that changed everything. Out in the yard, Leia had wandered closer to the well. The edge was damp with morning dew. The board covering it had shifted ever so slightly when she stepped on it. There was no scream, no crash, just a muffled thud, and then silence. When Emma returned a moment later, the yard looked just as she left it, empty, peaceful, still. She opened the door to step back out and stopped. The handle didn't budge. Locked, she said aloud, jiggling it. Annoyance, not panic. Yet. She moved around the front of the house, unaware that behind her, the wind whispered through the trees, and one voice, soft and high-pitched, had already vanished underground. Briggs heard it, though. He had been lying on the porch, head on his paws, dreaming of things long gone, searches, sirens, the sharp click of boots on gravel. He was 12 now, retired, slower than ever. His hind legs ached in the cold. But when the sound came, the distant echo of something falling, something wrong, his ears shot up. He stood, sniffed the air, walked toward the well. What he smelled was fear, fresh and small, and wet. He began to bark. One sharp warning, then another, then louder, faster. Not the bark of a dog being playful. The bark of a dog calling for backup. Emma had made it to the side gate by then. That's when she heard it, Briggs barking like she hadn't heard in years. Her chest tightened. "Briggs," she called, picking up her pace. "What is it?" She turned the corner and froze. The board was off the well. Leia was gone, and Briggs was pacing like a soldier on high alert. Emma's blood ran cold. She dropped the laundry basket and bolted to the edge. "Leia." Her voice echoed down the hole. A faint cry answered. Her knees gave way. Her daughter was in the well. And if your heart just skipped a beat, that's why Heroes for Animals exists, to tell the true stories of animals who don't need words to save lives. If you believe stories like this matter, hit subscribe and stay with us, because what this old K9 does next will make you believe in second chances. Emma's hands trembled as she looked around. No ladder, no rope, no help. She screamed toward the street. No one called 911. No service. She was alone, except for Briggs, who was no longer barking. He was just staring at her, staring with eyes that had seen disaster before and waiting for her to remember what he was trained to do. Briggs didn't bark again. He didn't need to. Emma knew that stare, solid, direct, unwavering, the stare he once used when tracking lost hikers with her father in the Blue Ridge Mountains. A K9 never forgets a mission, even when his body has aged out of the uniform. Emma snapped out of her panic and stood. "Okay," she breathed. Okay, we can do this." Her eyes scanned the yard. That's when she saw it, the old clothesline coil hanging by the garden fence. Her heart jumped. She ran for it. The rope was worn but strong, thick nylon, at least 20 feet. Not long enough to pull someone up, but just maybe long enough to send someone down. Briggs followed her without hesitation. She uncoiled the rope with trembling fingers, knelt beside him, and looked into his face. "You remember how to wear this, don't you?" she asked. He blinked once. It was all the answer she needed. Emma looped the rope under Briggs's chest, across his shoulders, the way she'd seen it done when he was in training, 2 passes under, 1 loop behind the 4 legs, a firm knot over the back. She paused to make sure he could breathe. He stood still the entire time, ready. Then she kissed the fur between his eyes. "You find her. You bring her back." The well loomed beside them, dark, damp, and narrow. Emma held the rope tight and braced her legs against a tree root for leverage. Briggs took one look down, ears twitching toward the faint cries. Then he jumped. The rope jerked in her hands as his body disappeared into the well's mouth, tail vanishing like the last note of a song. A splash echoed up seconds later. Then silence. Emma's grip tightened. "Briggs," she called. "Leia." Nothing. Then a bark. 1 bark. 2. Her breath caught in her chest. He'd found her. Below the surface, the water was freezing. Briggs surfaced first, paddling hard. His head bumped against the side of the narrow wall as he scanned for her. Ears pressed back, eyes searching. Then he saw her. Leia clung to a bent pipe, her arms barely hanging on. Her stuffed bunny floated nearby, its fabric soaked and sagging like a ghost. Briggs swam to her. She reached out, a tiny, trembling hand. With the care of a soldier guiding the wounded, Briggs nudged his body beneath her. Leia instinctively grabbed onto the rope across his back, her little fingers curling around the knots. The dog turned and began to climb up above. Emma felt the line shift. She dropped to her knees, using her entire body weight to pull slowly, evenly. The rope burned against her palms. The tension pulled back, heavy, harder than she expected. Then resistance, momentum, a tug. She leaned back with everything she had. The well seemed to fight her, pulling down against every inch of rope, but she didn't stop. Neither did he. And then a hand broke the surface. Tiny fingers first, then a wrist, then Leia's arm. Emma reached down, grabbed her daughter with both hands, and pulled her into her arms, collapsing onto the grass, sobbing. "You're safe. You're okay. You're okay." Seconds later, the rope moved again. Briggs emerged, wet, shivering, barely lifting his paws. Emma wrapped one arm around him, her face buried in his soaked fur. "You did it," she whispered. "You did the impossible." He didn't wag his tail, didn't bark. He just leaned his head into her chest and closed his eyes. The yard was quiet. Leia was safe in Emma's arms, wrapped in a blanket. Her sobs had softened to hiccups. Her head rested on her mother's shoulder, tiny fingers still clutching the rope harness tied around Briggs just moments ago. And Briggs? Briggs was on the ground, soaked to the bone, breathing hard. His chest rose and fell in a slow, shallow rhythm. Not hurt, just tired. Very tired. Emma knelt beside him, stroking the wet fur on his neck, whispering, "You did it. You saved her." He didn't move, but his eyes never left Leia. 15 minutes later, the yard was flooded with sirens and boots, 2 fire trucks, an ambulance, a sheriff's car. Paramedics rushed to Emma, took Leia gently from her arms, checked her vitals. She was cold but stable. No broken bones, no signs of trauma, just shock and mild hypothermia. One firefighter spotted the wet footprints leading from the well. "Wait, was someone else down there?" Emma pointed to Briggs. Everyone turned. He lay still, wrapped in a towel someone had thrown over him, his nose tucked into his paws, his body visibly trembling from the cold. He went in after her, she said quietly. I tied the rope to him. He jumped. No one said anything. Not for a moment. Then the fire chief removed his hat and knelt beside the dog. You're one hell of a soldier, he whispered. By the next morning, a photo of Briggs, soaked and wrapped in a red blanket, had gone viral. One firefighter had taken it with his phone and posted it online with a simple caption, he didn't hesitate. Within 24 hours, national news outlets had picked up the story. They called him the dog who pulled her back, the hero K9 who came out of retirement, the guardian of the well. People from around the country donated to animal shelters in his name. One family even offered to build him a custom orthopedic bed. Others sent letters, drawings, toys for Leia, dog treats for Briggs. But none of that moved Emma the way Leia did. 3 nights later, Emma found her daughter curled up beside Briggs near the fireplace. The dog was sleeping peacefully. Leia held his ear gently, whispering something. Emma leaned in closer. Bubba. It wasn't perfect, barely a word, but it was her first one. Emma covered her mouth with both hands. Bubba, Leia said again, this time louder, a little clearer. Briggs lifted his head and looked at her. Leia giggled and hugged him, burying her face into his side. Briggs didn't wag, didn't bark, but his tail tapped once, softly. Emma sat on the floor beside them, tears in her eyes. She remembered every therapy session, every frustrated doctor, every well-meaning neighbor saying, she'll talk when she's ready. She was ready now because someone listened to her without needing words. A week later, they were invited to a ceremony at the fire station. Reporters gathered. A small podium was set up in front of the engine bay. Red, white, and blue ribbons fluttered in the wind. The mayor read a proclamation, for bravery beyond measure and loyalty beyond training, we honor K9 Briggs. Everyone clapped. But no moment was louder than when Leia toddled onto the small stage, looked at the microphone, then turned to Briggs beside her and whispered, Bubba. The room went silent. Briggs blinked slowly, then gave a single soft bark, and the place erupted. He didn't ask for applause. He didn't need a medal. He just stayed close to the little girl who called his name, because that was the only reward that ever mattered. Winter came early that year, but the warmth inside Emma's house never left. Since the rescue, the energy in the home had changed, softened. Leia laughed more, moved with purpose, and, most incredible of all, spoke. Not constantly, not perfectly, but every word she tried came with intention. Blanket. Bunny. Bubba. Every morning, her first word was still his name. Briggs had slowed down. He no longer had the spring in his step, and he often needed help getting onto the couch or up the stairs. But he still followed Leia everywhere like a quiet shadow, always close. He no longer barked at passing trucks or the mailman, but he would growl, just barely, if Leia cried. His mission hadn't ended. It had only changed. At preschool, Leia's speech therapist called it a breakthrough. Emma called it a miracle. She's finally using her voice, the teacher said. Emma shook her head. No, she smiled. She's using his. One chilly Sunday afternoon, Leia stood in the backyard with a group of neighborhood kids. They were playing a game, a scavenger hunt. She clutched a small laminated card in her mittened hand. On it was a photo of Briggs wrapped in a towel the day he saved her. Beneath it, in bright blue crayon, she'd written, "My dog jumped in the well to get me." One of the boys asked, "Really? All the way down?" She nodded proudly. "He went in the dark and brought me back." Briggs sat near the porch, watching. His ears twitched slightly, like he was listening. Emma watched from the kitchen window and felt her throat tighten. Not because of sadness, but because of awe. The story never really faded. By midwinter, a non-profit search and rescue foundation had reached out. They'd heard about Briggs, about the rope, the well, the silent loyalty. They offered to name their new training center after him, the Briggs Center for K-9 Rescue and Recovery. Emma agreed, on one condition: let it be a place where retired dogs can still matter, even if they're old, even if they've already served. The board approved it unanimously. The grand opening was quiet but beautiful. Dozens of retired service dogs attended, along with their handlers. Children lined the path, holding photos of rescue dogs. And at the front, Leia stood, holding Briggs's leash. Her free hand wrapped tightly around a new drawing: a tall tree, a well, a rope, and a dog with wings. She didn't say much at the microphone, just 5 words, words that carried more weight than any speech: "He saved me. I speak now." The crowd stood. No one clapped right away. They were too busy wiping their eyes. That night, Emma sat beside Leia's bed as she traced the outline of Briggs on her bedsheet with a flashlight. "He's tired today," Leia said quietly. Emma nodded. "He worked hard. Will he still pull stars when he's too tired?" Emma blinked. "What do you mean?" Leia smiled. "Like ropes, but for angels." Emma's heart caught in her throat. She kissed her daughter's forehead. "Maybe if they need him." Briggs lay at the foot of the bed, eyes closed, his breathing steady. He wasn't a hero on call anymore. He was just home. And even in sleep, his ears twitched toward the little girl who now had a voice because of him. The snow fell softly that night. It dusted the porch rails, glazed the window panes, and muffled every sound until even the wind felt sacred. Inside, the house was warm, fire crackling, tea steeping, and Leia fast asleep in her room with her bunny tucked under one arm. Briggs lay at the foot of her bed. He hadn't moved much that day. His breathing was slower now, more deliberate. His legs trembled when he stood, and his eyes stayed closed longer between each blink. But he was calm, as if something inside him had settled, as if his body had finally caught up with what his heart already knew. His watch was almost over. Emma noticed it that evening. She sat beside him, brushing his fur gently, her hands soft and silent. "You're tired," she whispered. He didn't respond, but his tail tapped once. Just once. She didn't wake Leia that night. She didn't need to. Somehow, the little girl knew. At 2:14 a.m., Leia stirred, slipped out of bed, crawled beside Briggs, and curled up against his chest, her tiny arms hugging the dog who once pulled her out of darkness. She whispered, barely audible, "Sleep now, Captain. I've got the rope." Briggs breathed in, held it, exhaled, and didn't take another. The morning sun rose gently, as if it understood the moment. Emma walked into Leia's room and saw it, her daughter, sleeping peacefully beside the old dog, both of them still and warm, a quiet peace filling the space. She covered her mouth, sat beside them, and cried, not because it hurt, but because it was beautiful. They buried Briggs under the tall pine tree by the back fence, the one that caught every sunrise. They wrapped him in the blanket from Leia's bed. Next to him, they laid his harness, his badge, and a drawing Leia had made the day before, a picture of the night sky with a rope hanging down from the stars, and at the end of it, a dog pulling. The town held a small memorial. It wasn't big, but it was full. Firefighters, rescue workers, families, children who had never met Briggs but who had read his story and whispered his name at bedtime. Leia stood beside the mayor as they unveiled a plaque. It read, "To K-9 Briggs, who pulled without command, served without expectation, and watched over us long after his duty was done." That night, Leia sat on the back porch with a flashlight. She pointed it up at the stars and whispered, "If you see someone fall, pull again." Then she smiled. "I'll be listening." In the dark, wind brushed the trees. Some might say it was just air, but in that moment, it felt like breath. Familiar, loyal, still watching. Spring came quietly. The snow melted from the eaves. Wildflowers crept back into the yard. And the tree by the back fence, the one where Briggs was buried, bloomed earlier than any of the others. Leia noticed it first. "He's growing," she said. Emma looked up from her coffee. "What do you mean?" Leia pointed to the blossoms. "Briggs, he's growing into the tree now, so he can still watch from higher." Emma didn't reply. She didn't need to. That morning light, it felt like a yes. Life moved forward, but it didn't move on. Briggs wasn't a memory. He was presence. Leia still spoke to him every night, kneeling by the windowsill, flashlight in hand, sending messages skyward in beams of soft light. "Today, I helped Caden at recess," she whispered one evening. "He fell. I pulled him back." Emma stood at the doorway, her heart quiet. Briggs had taught her more than how to speak. He taught her how to listen. That summer, Emma and Leia were invited to the opening of the Briggs Center for K-9 Rescue and Recovery. It wasn't a grand building, just a sturdy facility tucked into the edge of a forest preserve. Inside, it held space for training new rescue dogs, rehabilitating retired ones, and teaching children how to communicate with animals through empathy, not command. At the ceremony, a new plaque was unveiled beneath the center's logo. It wasn't made of marble or steel. It was wood, and on it, burned in bold lettering, "Every bond begins with trust. Every rescue begins with one who listens." During the ribbon cutting, Leia stood beside a new K-9 recruit, a young German shepherd named Rook. He'd been rescued from a shelter and was just beginning training. But when Leia stepped forward and signed one simple word, "safe," he sat beside her, leaned into her leg, and stayed. The trainer stared. Emma just smiled. "That's what Briggs did, too," she said. "He listened before he acted." On the way home that day, Leia stared out the car window as the hills rolled by. Then she whispered, "Mommy?" "Yes, sweetheart?" "Do you think ropes can go both ways?" Emma tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Leia smiled softly. "I think sometimes we pull them, and sometimes they pull us." Emma reached for her daughter's hand and squeezed it. "Yes, I think that's exactly how it works." That night, Leia placed a new drawing on her shelf. It was a picture of her, older now, standing with another dog at the edge of a cliff. Above them, stars, between them, a rope, strong, unbroken. Underneath, she wrote, "Some ropes don't fray. They become bridges." And so the story ended where it began, with a girl, a well, and a dog who didn't need words to say, "I'm not leaving without you." Because the greatest rescues don't always happen in water or fire. Sometimes they happen in silence, in loyalty, in love that lives long after the leash is gone.